Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new Art of the Game where us three experienced game masters of different game systems give you GM tips for your D&D game, Call of Cthulhu game, Rifts game, whatever game you want to play. And today, I helped pick this topic. It's a reaction video, originally over a bonus action channel. It's a reaction video to 8 Ways to DM D&D, which is a reaction to D&D Beyond article talking about this topic. So, who wants to get started?
I would like to start out by pointing out the exact obvious that at no point in his video does he say there are 8 ways to run the game. In fact, he says quite the opposite. So I find his title a little bit specious.
Is it clickbaity?
I wouldn't even go that far, but go ahead, Greg.
I was going to say the one thing I did like, and really we're talking about the D&D Beyond article, because all he did was kind of match popular DMs to the different styles.
Yeah, Matt Mercer and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. I do like the idea of separating the plotter versus pantser, because those are two extremes, and I don't think anyone really does fully both, right?
Probably not.
But yeah, I do like that breakout.
It's very similar to what George R. R. Martin talks about with how to write a book, where you either plan it out or you kind of let it go. And I think he calls it like the curator or something versus the gardener kind of approach. Yeah. But it's very much the same as what he talks about. It's like how to write a book, and probably why it takes him so long.
Yeah. Well, we got dire wolves before we got his Winds of Winter, but
we got real dire wolves.
yeah. That was a good idea.
Right.
Yeah,
but that's a different topic.
Yes, it
is. God, okay, don't think about dire wolves. Don't talk about it, Greg.
How many different types of dire wolves are there?
Yeah, it's time for our resurrecting extinct creatures podcast.
Yes. I just hope Willie Mammoth tastes good. But I do like some of the more defined ones, just to give ideas to stuff, because I definitely find that the only reason I think it's good to break them out like that is you don't want a DM to think that, you have to do it the one way. You've watched Matt Mercer, you have to do it that way. And a lot of people who watch Matt Mercer first and then go watch Brennan Lee Mulligan, they think, oh, that they do it the same way, right? And they're so good. And it's like, no, actually, they're very different from each other. And both are fine. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Like, I'm very much according to this, I'm very much a vibe type DM. I care more about the individual characters and little interacting and improving and stuff like that than I do about the world itself, generally. Just me.
I think if we're going to mention this, we should probably have some context for anyone that's listening to the video, because they may not have actually seen the thing we're talking about. I'd say that's very possible, since this is kind of targeting brand new people to the hobby. And the video was, of course, this guy talking about different styles of being a game master, but he starts out with 2 of them, the ones you just mentioned, where it basically deals with the subject of either you're going to plan ahead for everything, or you're going to be the greatest improviser on the planet. And honestly, I found those 2 examples personally for me to be the most useful thing in the entire video, because it is probably the most accurate representation of it, because everybody who plays it as a GM is going to fall somewhere in between those 2 extremes, right? And when the issue I have with the video like this and the article, why I would necessarily think it's valuable, is because ultimately what's going to happen is that you're going to sit down, you're going to run the game, and you're going to find like some way through that works for you, right? And because of the individuality of it, like what's more valuable is, like, of course, like technique of how to do it, but like then saying that I fall into a category. And I think ultimately, like, the person who's sitting down to do it is going to sit down and find their way and ultimately land on something that actually works for them, as opposed to having their attention on like what I am. And I think if you were to actually like survey people, I think you're going to find that it's going to be actually very hard to categorize a lot of game masters in these narrow bands, that there's going to be shades of gray, and like people have tendencies or maybe fall into multiples at a time. But I kind of just fundamentally disagree with it, because it's like, particularly when you're a brand new game master, if you've not done it before, you literally have to sit down and just do it and get your feet wet. It's like going in and like trying to sell something for the first time, or trying to ask a girl out for the first time. Like you just have to get in there and do it, and the whole business of what category you're in only complicates it.
I do think it's a good thing, but not if you look at it from a perspective of, okay, I'm going to tell you the 10 ways to DM, and therefore you're going to go through like a character generator where you're creating your DM of how you want to be. That's obviously bad. Of course, that's bad. Yeah. But as a way of analyzing different types of DMing and different types of GMing, whatever, I think it could be useful, because you're pointing out the fact that there are very different types, and that's fine, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's good to, because I could almost see it like if you could give like 10 pretty good types, and then you got a score for the way that you play. Mm-hmm. If you were to go out and try to just find games online, I would love that, to be like, oh, I can find the type that I actually like here, right? Like, I don't see anything wrong with that as a way of analyzing what you already are, not as a way of making like a character generator where I'm going to pick what I'm going to be, right? So that's kind of how I look at it. I actually think it's a perfectly fine thing to do, and I do agree with you. The first two, Plotter and Pantser, are the best way to break it out, because no one is all one and not the other, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it certainly makes it a lot simpler for a new game master to step in and go, like, okay, well, what are the two main points of approach, and where do I fit in? And if you can break it down into something more simple, I think it's more valuable, because like the new guy trying to figure out, or girl trying to figure out their way in this hobby, and like how they're going to do it. Like something like that, extremely simple. You go, okay, these are my two extremes of, like, this is one extreme, this is the other extreme, and there really are no other extremes. Like it is. I think it's a much easier approach for somebody that is trying to figure it out for the first time.
Yeah, I see this as just like, you have this in writing. You have a spectrum of where you fall in Plotter and Pantser, and then Plantser is sometimes thrown around as somewhere between. But it's a spectrum where you lean one way or the other, and it varies for writing. It tends to vary for different projects too, not just every project.
I was just thinking that it marries writing a lot. Mirrors. Well, marries like with mirror.
Well, it's like the thing George R. R. Martin was talking about, where it's like you either plan ahead or you let the story evolve, and it's very similar, to what he was talking about with the two different approaches to writing a book.
I think one other way,
just Never mind. I don't want to do more digs on George R. R. Martin.
Give the man a break, all right? I also think one of the things I find interesting with the Dungeon Master subclass is I kind of would find it interesting to try to look at it like, are there certain game systems that lend themselves in one direction or another sometimes? Like if I look at the taxi driver method, where you kind of planned out like how the story would go if the players don't do anything, and then you kind of roll with what the players do. You just kind of mapped out like what happens if they don't do anything. Yeah. and then you improvise and switch it around as you react to that. That's very similar to what Monster of the Week does with their what they suggest GMs to do, or keepers do, where you have this kind of this I forget what they call it now. It's a timeline of like what the monster does if nobody intervenes. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, because it makes it really easy. Like in that game system, they're like, hey, here are a few different characters that could be allies, victims, whatever. Here's some clues and to what the monster could be to help lead them to it. Some locations, and here's what would happen if the hunters don't do anything, and then just adapt to that. Whenever the hunters do something, and that's kind of very much a taxi driver vibe going on there. So I thought that was interesting.
Well, with a game like Monster of the Week, you're actually going for a very specific kind of gameplay experience, because we have a genre of TV shows that has basically evolved over the last 20 years. And they, it's popular. So they're, until it isn't, people are going to still be cranking these shows out. Right. And so, with creating that game, the designers clearly had a specific kind of experience in mind, because they know that that's what people are showing up for. So that, absolutely makes sense that they're also going to try to encourage the game masters to create that experience.
But
I
that
actually,
is,
yeah,
that's for very much more tailored type
yeah,
of systems for sure.
yeah,
That tailored towards one style. Yeah.
yeah, and it's very clear from reading that book that like it's clearly not a game that's intended to be like the epic long-term campaign. Like you're not going to be playing one of those for 5 years.
No,
Like you might do with
a lot
a
of indie games don't. A lot of
No,
people never
yeah.
really do. Honestly,
yeah,
it's
true.
it's a dream
But
that people never usually hit.
I've done it. I've done it more than once. Yeah.
You've done the dream more than once.
Done the
Yeah.
dream
Yeah,
more
I-
than once.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll say as well is I think there's a lot missing from this. And again, the only rational way to think about this is the way of analyzing, not as a way of prescribing. The and the plotter and pantser as two major categories is I think good. And all the ones that they put under it are just different examples, I think. And you could probably come up with 20 more if you try hard, right? Like that's why where you're saying that it's not they're a bit arbitrary, right?
Yeah.
The one thing I'll say on top of this though that the video doesn't talk about is the players play a huge role into the DM style that ends up coming about. I could play with one group and have a completely different style when I play with a different group, because it really does depend on players a lot. If you have a group of players that are just driving things forward, constantly going in the most chaotic, random directions, not only will I be extremely happy, I'll be very much the type that's a vibe DM. If you have a group that just kind of goes with the flow, they feel like they can interact in each individual scene, but they don't feel like they drive the scene, what scene happens too much, then I'll be much more of a novelist, right? So it's, I think players actually drive it way more than even the GM does in a lot of cases.
Yeah, because if you have passive players and you're trying to do a beer holder, it's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
It'll
actually go really badly. It'll go not only badly, it'll be worse than badly. It'll be boring.
Well, I kind of think that it might be more correct to look at these instead of just looking at it as looking at these categories as like this is your jamming style, so much as considering it more like representative of the different skills a game master has to have. Because kind of the point with this series that we were doing is that we've been discussing like the critical skill set for a game master, right? And there's so some of these topics are this is the skill, you need to learn it. Some of these topics are like, here's how you apply the skill, and there's different ways things can be put to work, right? But like when I'm looking at this thing, what I basically see is these are all of the skills that you need to have to some degree in order to be able to do it. And it's not so much a matter of like I think it's actually a mistake to consider that, okay, well, I'm only going to be a novelist type, or I'm only going to be this, or I'm going to be that, right? Like, because, like if you're only going to double down on one thing that you're good at, there's going to be massive flaws in your technique, and there will be points when the game fails, and it's going to be failed because you're inflexible. And I've seen that happen to other game masters who could only they just didn't have some of these abilities, or they were unwilling to bend. No, I'm going to run the game the way I want to run it, and it's not really much of a surprise to me when those games fail. And so I think this is actually more representative. Like, we should actually be trying to be better at all these things. Like you say, this vibe checker. I mean, reading the room is you need to be able to, no matter what kind of GM you are, you should be paying very close attention to the expectations of the players, and what it is that they actually show up at the table for, because you need to deliver that experience or the game will end, right? And so I think they're all just different sides of the same coin, rather than just a single GM technique.
I agree with that for sure, but you're always going to have someone who is better at some things and worse at other things, right?
Undeniably.
I've definitely played with DMs that they run a module, they're going to run that module. If you step outside the module, they'll quickly get you back into the module.
Yeah.
And I don't think I don't want to sit here and say they're low skill, right? I think that's a preference.
Mm-hmm. And
that's fine.
I'm not saying that either. I mean, because if there's 10 skills you need, the proficiency on those is going to be all over the board. right? Like some people are going to be better at some things than others, and like not everyone's fantastic. Like even myself, I will fully admit I don't have the presentation that a lot of these professional guys do. I'm not saying that they're better than me or that I'm better than them. I'm just saying like I cannot do what Matt Mercer can do. Like I'm not there with millions of people watching my videos on YouTube every week. If I could, I would be absolutely doing that.
You're also not a professional actor.
No, I'm not. That's kind of where it goes. Like I'm,
Yeah.
like my skills are more in like, I can create the world. Like I got game design. Like I can, you can sit there and throw shit at me and I will freaking bounce off that to the ends of the earth. Like my improv game is really strong, but I just don't have that professional presentation. I'm not polished. And I don't know how to get there.
So you could almost think of all these subtypes as being like merit badges, and you have to earn the merit badge.
Okay, all right.
Can you be a number cruncher?
Yeah.
Can you be a vibe checker? Can you be a novelist if you need to?
see, it's interesting because like because he was talking in the video about the guy, like the GMs that memorize everything. Like there was a time when I literally had like it was very hard to catch me on something in the Rifts RPG that I didn't know. Like I'm not that bad anymore. Like I don't. I look back on that and I'm not proud of it, but like I still retain a lot of it. Like even if I don't really kind of like have it down like as sharp as I did, like I could get it back if you gave me a week, which is really sad to say that. If I just sat down for a week and just read these books, I'd be exactly the way I was when I was 18 all over again.
So you used to lean into Number Cruncher or Rule Sage.
Well, it's very easy. It's very easy for me to assimilate that information and memorize it. Like it's very easy, and I don't know why.
It is funny because I would say that's actually one of my weaker suits. Is unless I see something a lot, I forget it pretty quickly. And it means I don't always memorize rules. And I tend to just make them up on the fly if I need to.
Vibe check.
Yeah, and well, see, that's not a bad thing because like if you can't find the answer immediately, if you don't know, you have to make something to keep the game going. It's very vital. But it's like there are like I'm looking at my Rifts collection of plotting books here, and like there's things I read when I was like 16 years old, and I still remember it, and it's bizarre. To me, my retention is so good.
It was easier for me in high school. I would memorize all the books, and now I'm like, how did I do that before? I don't know.
Yeah,
you see, I've never read a TTRPG book from front to back. I've never read a module front to back. I never read a rules book front to back.
I
never
totally have. Most of these books I've read 3 times cover to cover.
You know how I learned 5e? Because I played a lot of Pathfinder, and then I took a big break, and then I got back into 5e. I learned 5e by watching Critical Role, and then I watched like 2 seasons of it. Right? I don't want to admit how many hours that is. It's like 4,000, and then I could just kind of look up rules here and there.
Just passively while you're at work, right?
Well,
to be fair, I listen at 3x.
well, the 5e and 3e aren't that different, really.
No,
they're extremely similar.
I mean,
like D&D has a core game mechanic and like a core style, and it hasn't changed much since the first edition.
Just to get rid of THAC0.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my god, that was a good thing. But no, it's like the way that game plays, is like it hasn't changed that much. That there have been nuances that have been changed, and they've gone in the direction of increasing simplicity, but it isn't that different. It's it's
and like in the early 2000s, it was all D20. Everything was D20. So if you're playing, then you're exposed to that game, that rule system. Also,
hey, I think we're off topic.
Yeah. We're like a taxi driver, players.
Well, and that again is one of the skills that GM has to get people back on topic.
So we've established they are not types to be chosen. They are instead merit badges to be earned.
Yeah, or what I would say is tactics based on the players or game you're playing.
Yeah, and I would say look at,
and it's not exhaustive.
No, but I honestly would say that it's probably more correct that if you're going to run the game, you need to find your footing and figure out where you are, and like categories don't matter. Like, you obviously you're going to land somewhere between planning and improv, which everyone will, but ultimately you're just going to sit down and do it. And I think the biggest problem is for because I was actually over one of the shows I was at in the last, I think it was last weekend or week before last. There were 3 different people that I met who were brand new GMs that I introduced to the show, and but every single one of them had the problem of getting over doing it for the first time. They had to work up the courage to actually go for it, and they were extremely thrilled that I was to put them in the direction of someplace to get some some knowledge. But it was it really comes down to you have to sit down in the chair, and you have to you just have to just do it, and you have to, doesn't matter if you fail, you just have to get in there and you have to find your footing and find out where you are, and then build from there.
Yeah, you can read the book.
It's the same as everything.
One at a time. Go, Marks.
Go ahead, Greg.
Marks,
Okay.
go.
Oh.
Marks, go.
Yeah, you can read the book forever, but until you play it and actually experience it, you don't really know how the game how it's going to happen. So
Yep.
if you've never played it all.
And I was going to say it's the same for everything. It's whether you're writing, sometimes you just have to sit down and start writing, and things will start coming to you, even if you throw it out. And if you're coding like me, sometimes you just have to start typing something where you can, and you'll find that it'll start coming to you. And you learn what type of coder you are, you learn what type of writer you are, and it just comes naturally. But I do agree with Mark that reading this article could give you some idea of the type of player that will work with you, but only after you've already done it some. So you can have something to analyze.
Well, in the case of the people I was meeting, there was that classic thing I keep running into of, we're getting a group together. Somebody has to be the GM, and nobody's ever played before.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was
That's why they have starter packs. That one.
Well, I met this one group, and I told they wanted to find a GM. They were all wanted to be players, and I said, well, one of you has to do it. And I'm like what I told them was that the person who's going to end up doing it is the person who gets the most excited about it, and that you all should take turns. And I think that's what they're going to do. But
cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think really nowadays with conventions and stuff, it's not too hard to find a game to play. Just get experience before you do GM or GM. See what's love.
Or just watch 4,000 hours of Critical Role.
You can, yeah.
Or 27 hours of the Orville.
Hey.
Yeah. Much easier, much more confrontable.
Can they go to miniaturedragon.com to find that?
Oh, they can actually. Yes,
How about that?
and you can also go to Egotastic Fun Time and find that too.
There you go.
Or Talking the Orville. So hey, I think I think we got a show here, guys.
I think so.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's called Hard Game. What the hell?
Let's wrap this up. I was trying to find some. Anyway, okay. Trying some reference to this. All right, so that is the 8 ways to DM or D&D reaction video, and I'll put links to the video that we're talking about and the article.
And tell us what you think down below, down there somewhere.
And Greg, how many hours was Art of the Roll?
I don't know. Once a week for 2 hours for about a year and a half, whatever that ends up being.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and so go check it out. Subscribe.
150 hours. Sorry.
You also got actual plays on Cabbit Crossing too.
Yep.
And we don't have as much as Art of the Roll probably, but we've been doing it for like a year now.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Well, but Art of the Roll is all one continuous campaign, so that's.
Oh, it's true. Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
so it's a little tough to beat that one. 2
campaigns.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, now we're getting off track. What is going on here? I'm going to be the beer holder. Come on, keep going.
Yeah. You got to end it, Mark. You just got to end it.
So let us know in the comments. Let's make it a conversation. What of these subclasses could you be, perhaps? Or is there something else that you think it doesn't fit that you would like to suggest? Just let us know in the comments. All right. Well, that's it for today's Art of the Game. And until next time.
Be the alcoholic subclass.
When the dice roll high, we touch the sky. But when they crash, it's a belly laugh. Genre